Imagine you end up falling in love with a gay man. Started out as a situationship that lasted 5 years. You were the aggressor and the chaser. When you met, he told you he wasn't ready for a relationship, but you knew that you could just change his mind if he gave you a chance. After months of you guys hanging out, he finally caved in with some liquid courage. You thought this was going to be it. Thought he'd want a relationship and that he would fall in love with you. The first couple of months it was fun. Thing is, he's really charming. He's got great style. He loves to cook. He's a really good host. Every Thursday, you guys would have a movie night. He would make you the most amazing food. But after a few months, he started losing interest and you became desperate. The more he would let go, the more you would push him into a corner and ask him if he wanted something more serious. And every time he said no, you would argue for 3 hours. This went on for 4 years. On and off because he would block you, because you were overbearing, controlling. You always wanted to be with him. After 6 months of radio silence, like magic, he calls you and asks you if you're still interested in him. Are you giving him a chance? Of course you are, because you're obsessed. Babe, part 2 is up. What would you do if you ended up falling in love with a gay man? You've now been in the situationship for 4 years with him. After he's done blocking you for months, he calls you and asks you if you still want to be in a relationship. And you don't even hesitate, you just say yes. But it wasn't the same as before. He's always busy with work. He can't really spend too much time with you. After 6 months of you constantly chasing this boyfriend, you ask him why he wanted to get back together with you if he's not even willing to spend the time. This is when he tells you that he had a really bad experience with somebody, but he doesn't tell you who, that he's just really sick of dating people. He's ready to settle down and he promises to make more time for you. But actually, nothing changes. He's distant but not cold. And when you do see each other, you guys have fun. When you're not with each other, he doesn't even remember to text you, never calls you. You're the one that has to make all the plans. One day he shows up to your apartment crying and scared. You asked him what happened. He told you a man followed him home. And this is when you find out he's been in love with this other man for years. That explains his behavior. He's begging you for help. Are you gonna help him? Part 3 is up. What would you do if you fell in love with a gay man? He comes to your apartment crying and scared. He confesses to you that he's in love with a man who was stalking him, and that's basically why he wanted to get into a relationship with you. He explains that he's been gay his entire life, and that he's been hurt so many times by men, and all he wants to do is to be able to fall in love with you. You finally understand why he's been so distant, and why he's never said I love you, why he avoids spending time with you. He ends up asking you for help. He proposes a lavender marriage, that you get married, that you take care of each other, and that you are just life companions. And that's it. All your hopes and dreams of a relationship with this man have been destroyed. But because you're so in love with him and you see how hurt he is, you want to say yes. But are you really willing to marry a gay man for his own comfort? There are plenty of other men out there for you, but he is technically your best friend and he gives you the best advice. Will you accept, or will you try to find another man? Let me know what you think in the comments. Bye.
My best friend only keeps me around because I'm fat. Disclaimer, this is not my story time with sending me on Instagram. I've always been the chunky, pudgy, overweight, chubby girl in the group. Now our friend group consisted of 4 girls in high school. Once we graduated college, 3 of us stuck together while the other one was kind of out. Then the other 2 girls in the group got boyfriends, and I was on my own. Eventually they stopped reaching out to me and it was like I didn't even exist. Now, let me be very clear about something. I have accepted that I'm the chunky girl of the group. I never get jealous. I do not envy them. They are all very attractive and skinny, but I just don't care about that. I'm happy that they love their bodies, but I feel okay in mine. But of course, I knew that I needed to get healthier, so I signed up to the gym. Around this time, one of my girlfriends broke up with her boyfriend and she started coming around again. And I accepted her friendship again, but I told her that it hurt my feelings that she completely ignored me once she got a boyfriend. She promised that she would never do it again, and we started going to the gym together. She's the one that always gets hits on. Guys compliment her. It's like I don't even exist. In fact, they ask me for her number when she doesn't want to give it to them. You see where this is going? Decided to get dressed up all cute and we went to a bar together. Babe, part 2 is up. You gotta go watch. My best friend only keeps me around because I'm fat and I make her look good. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. That's when she invited me to go to our favorite bar. As usual, she always invites me to go to her place to get ready. Nope, she can never come to mine. So I lugged all my clothes and makeup all the way to her place. And as we're getting ready, she starts suggesting that I change my outfit. I felt really cute in my outfit. It was a sleek black blazer with the matching bottoms, tight black tank top, and gold jewelry. But as soon as she saw my outfit, she said I looked way too formal. And then she spent the next 30 minutes trying to convince me to change and put on one of her tight-ass dresses. I asked her if she was in her right mind, considering her dress wouldn't even fit my right thigh. Then she said that I needed to calm down and that we should just go get drinks. And then she ended up copying my outfit. She wore a gray blazer with skinny jeans. When we get to the bar, I started having fun right away. I saw one of my besties from work, and her and I get along so well. This is when I noticed my bestie was really quiet. But as usual, she's only waiting for a guy to come hit on her. Finally, some random dude comes up to her and asks her if she wants a drink. She's like, oh my god, thank you so much. Then she looks at me and says, it's always good to have you around, you know? Part 3 is up. My bestie only keeps me around because I'm fat and I make her look good. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. That's when she tells me that it's always good having me around, you know? And I did not know what she meant at the time. When the random guy shows up with her drink, and then she does the thing that she always does. She flirts with these guys, puts her hand on their shoulder, tends to laugh at their stupid nasty ass jokes in the hopes of getting a second drink. Me, on the other hand, was dancing and having fun with my coworker. That's when the random guy says, "Hey you need to tell your best friend to give me her phone number." And I responded, "I mean, she will if she thinks you're hot." That's when my best friend whispers into this guy's ear, but loud enough for me to hear, "Oh, she's just upset because I'm the one that gets hit on and not her. You know, because she's a little bit chubby." It didn't even make me angry. I already knew she thought this, but it stung. Like the fatty I am, I invited my coworker to a nice dinner. I left my bestie at the bar without a car. I also sent her a text saying I heard what you said about me to the guy, and if that's what you really think about me, then this is not a friendship I need to be pursuing. The next morning I had about 20 missed calls from her, and so I blocked her. If she really wanted to, she could have come to my house. Do you think I did the right thing? Self-care sister out. I found out my boyfriend didn't use protection when he cheated on me. If you want to send me your story time, slide into my DMs. I ran through boyfriend is a slut. 2 years ago, we met through friends at a party. He was asking for my number before he even knew my name. To be perfectly blunt, I thought he was kind of ugly. Wasn't anything particularly special about him. He wasn't well-spoken or intelligent, wasn't good-looking, he didn't have a high-paying job. The only good quality I found in him that night was that he made me laugh. Not just once, but basically the entire night. I really underestimated just how much a man making me laugh made me feel good, so I gave the poor ugly guy a chance. I gave him my number. 2 weeks later, I get a stupid dumb text from him. "Hey, do you want to go out to brunch?" And I said sure. He ends up taking me to brunch in Lavo, NYC. If you know Lavo, you know that it's basically like a club in the morning, but with brunch food. So he got a couple of drinks in me, and before I knew it, he started looking pretty. And bam, he went in for a kiss, and I let him. A month later, we were together. But I caught him texting one of his exes. I broke up with him. We got back together. I caught him talking to another girl on Instagram. We broke up. We got back together. Then he was on his best behavior for a couple of months. Go to part 2, it's already out. I found out my ran-through boyfriend didn't use protection when he cheated on me. If you want to send me your story time, slide into my DMs. Let me remind you, he was the ugly guy I gave a chance. After the 3rd time I caught him talking to a girl on Instagram, I broke things off, but then he was on his best behavior, so we got back together. This is where I severely underestimated him. You see, because I thought he was a little bit ugly, didn't have a high-paying job, wasn't particularly smart, but he could make me laugh, just didn't think he was able to get girls, especially not ones that were willing to take off their clothes in front of him. But one day I catch him scratching his thingy. Like, a lot, you know? Not normal. So I ask him, "What is wrong with you?" Then he starts to cry and breaks down. He says that he cheated on me with a girl and that he did not use protection. So right then and there, I took myself to the doctor and I got myself tested, and thank God I did not catch whatever he had. Turns out he has crabs. Google that at your own risk. Do you think he even apologized to me? Nope. In fact, he ghosted me. Called him and texted and he blocked me. I went to his apartment and he wouldn't let me in. This is what I get for giving the ugly guy a chance. He didn't even care for my own safety. He wasn't even gonna tell me about it. Now, how should I get revenge? Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I'm 24 years old and my boyfriend is 21. According to him, he has never been with any girl who's had cellulite before, or even an ounce of body fat. Yes, I know what you're thinking, he's a total asshole, which in that sense, he is. But the rest of the time, he's completely fine and actually sweet. We met last year at a friend's party. At the party, I instantly fell in love with him. I thought he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life. And it was reciprocated. I saw him from across the room and he made eye contact. A few minutes later, he walked over to me and just struck up a conversation. I know that people present themselves the way they want to be seen, especially when they're trying to impress someone they're attracted to. He started telling me about how he's studying to be a doctor, how he volunteers at animal shelters, and that every single weekend he also volunteers at the soup kitchen. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. By the end of the night, he had asked me out on a date and I said yes. I did explain to him that I didn't want anything serious and he said that was totally fine. I was trying to focus on my studies, so having a boyfriend was not in my plans. But after we went on 7 dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He wouldn't take no for an answer. After about a month, I finally said yes. Mind you, at this point, he hadn't seen me naked, not even in a bathing suit. The very night that I said yes to being his girlfriend, he asked me to come over to his place. He made a whole gourmet dinner, even bought super expensive wine. So we ended up doing it for the first time that night. The next morning when I woke up, the first thing he said to me was, "Do you ever exercise?" I was shocked. Part 2 is up. Story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimers are not my story time. I sent me on Instagram. That's when he said point blank, super serious, "Do you ever exercise?" I just stared at him. I had literally just woken up in his bed after the first time we ever did it. Then I thought he must be joking. So I started to laugh a little, and then he says, "No, seriously, do you ever exercise?" I said, "Sometimes." Then he told me, "You should really try to work out at least 5 times a week." I went home and finally texted him saying that I wasn't comfortable with the way he spoke to me. That's when he said that what he said to me was completely normal, and that I shouldn't be offended. This was all in text, by the way. That's when he sends me another text message saying, "You wouldn't have as much cellulite as you do if you didn't eat so much fast food. And if you exercise 5 times a week like I told you." I didn't reply to him for the rest of the day. Later that day, he shows up to my apartment and says, "I should feel comfortable enough to tell you what I think about you." He somehow ended up making me feel bad and I ended up apologizing. Obviously, after that, I became really self-conscious about my cellulite and my entire body. So anytime we were together, I would always stay under the covers. By the way, my boyfriend doesn't have a great body. He's super soft and pudgy. Last week, he told me that he had abs though. Part 3 is story time about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's on Instagram. One day he pulls up his shirt and says, look, I have abs. Which no, he doesn't. He's super soft and has a thick layer of fat on it. I smirked and he said, what? And I said, you don't have abs. Then he says, yes, I do. I'm in better shape than you. By the way, he said this in front of his friends. So I was super embarrassed and stayed quiet the entire day. He finally went to drop me off and I was so happy to be home. But he decided to come upstairs with me. Got straight into my PJs. And when I came out of my bedroom, he says, wow, your cellulite's getting worse by the day. That's when I finally broke. I turned around and started yelling at him. I told him he had no right to talk about my body the way that he did. And that all he does is objectify me. He started laughing and said, wow, those are big words. And that when we met, he thought that I was in better shape. But my clothes obviously tricked him. I'm 5'4" and I weigh 130 pounds. I am by no means fat, but the way that he was bullying me was making me think that I was. That's when I told him that he was the fat one and that he had a big, huge beer belly. I also told him that his face was super round, but that didn't bother me. Oh yeah, and that his hairy back was gross. Then he said, wow, I can't believe you're attacking my physical appearance. Then he stormed out of my apartment. And as soon as he left, I felt happy. We haven't spoken in 4 days. I'm afraid that if he asks me to get back with him, I will. But I should just break up with him, right? What should I do? Story time about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. I'll tell you that last month I made $60,000. This clear is not my story time and send me on Instagram. So at the beginning I had to lie about my age. I'm really 36 years old, but I say I'm 22. I do look a lot younger than I am, and of course I get filler and Botox. I started my Instagram account 6 years ago. My inspirations were Anna Cherie, Amanda Lee, I am JoJo, and Abigail Ratchford. I mean Abigail Ratchet. I basically copied all of these girls' pictures. Within a month of starting my Instagram account, I had 10,000 followers. And yes, all of them were males. But I didn't really start making money until 2018. You know, like every other girl on Instagram, I signed up for OF. And that's when I started making serious money. But I was also making money from Instagram. Brands would send me clothes and watches and protein powders, stuff like that. Eventually, I became an ambassador for one of the biggest Instagram clothing stores. I think we all know what I'm talking about. Fashion Hova, and I started making a lot of money then. So I basically started living above my means. I got myself a new apartment in Beverly Hills, and it was $6,000 a month. I also got myself a Mercedes, and I would exclusively shop at Air One. I would also go shopping at Rodeo Drive almost every day because I wanted the paparazzi to get pictures of me. And I even called the paparazzi on me a few times, so I had to pay them like $2,000 out of pocket. So yeah, I was spending a lot of money. Whatever money I got that month, I would literally spend it by the end. One month I spent $25,000 going out with friends. I would usually pick up the bill. This is what started getting me into trouble. Part 2 is story time about how I became an IG model / escort for billionaires. After I spent the $25,000 in 1 month, I decided I needed another income source. So I thought of escorting. One of my very good friends in LA was also an escort, and she told me about it, but I was like, I can't do that. But one day I called her and she told me everything. She gets contacted through Instagram by very, very rich men, like billionaires. I honestly didn't believe her at first, but then she showed me receipts. Her bank account had more than $1 million in it. She told me that she had only been doing it for 6 months. She put me in contact with several people and they had to verify a bunch of my stuff. Then after a week, I was finally in. But I was really scared. I had to go get my passport renewed. This meant that I was going to be traveling internationally with men that I didn't know. A few days later, I get a message on Instagram from an account. The guy that owned this account was clearly very rich. It wasn't him contacting me, it was his assistant. He got my information and 2 days later, I was on a private plane. I landed in a foreign country and I spent the entire weekend with this guy. He didn't speak English. Basically took me around his city and showed me off for his friends. I honestly didn't feel uncomfortable at any point and he didn't try anything. In fact, he was actually super shy, but his friends on the other hand were really handsy. Part 3 is up. Story time about how I became an Instagram model / escort for billionaires. That's when his friends started getting really handsy. We were in a really expensive high-rise and the apartment was literally worth millions. And I knew that all of these guys were used to getting whatever they wanted. One of the friends actually grabbed my arm and told me to sit on his lap, but I told him I couldn't. He wasn't the one that hired me to be there, so I had to go straight to the guy that hired me. I told him that his friends were making me uncomfortable and he said, okay, we should leave then. I was actually shocked that he listened to what I wanted. Now one of my regular clients and I travel with him almost every 2 months. So let me tell you how much he paid me. For the 3-day weekend, I ended up with $50,000. Yep, that's right. But let me tell you a little about the dark side of this. A few jobs later, I ended up with somebody who was completely crazy. I ended up going to Vegas with this guy. He was approximately 10 years younger than me and was filthy rich. But he was also a complete psycho. He bought me this whole outfit that he wanted me to wear the entire night. Told him I was more comfortable in my clothes. I was wearing a Fendi dress. It looked great. That's when he said, no, you're gonna wear this. I ended up walking around Vegas in a micro mini skirt and a bikini top. By the end of this night, he was getting really aggressive. I tried to stay quiet, hoping that he would just forget that I was in his car. Suddenly, he turned to look at me and wanted me to do something. When I said no, he grabbed me by the hair and told me that he owned me for the night. Then he said, I'll add an extra $20,000 in there for you. And it does get worse. But now I learned to save my money. I no longer pay for my friends' drinks and food. I still have my $6,000 apartment, and I upgraded my car. I live like a princess. I also bought my parents a house though. It was definitely one of the happiest days of my life. And believe it or not, I actually did end up finding love. My boyfriend is okay with my job, but he just asked me to be safe. Of course, he asked me every day to quit because he wants to support me, but he can't give me the life I've given myself. What should I do? Storytime about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. Send me on Instagram. I come from a really big family. My mom has 5 sisters and 1 brother, and my dad has 4 brothers and sisters. All of them have their own kids, so I have a lot of cousins. And this means we have a lot of family get-togethers. Every single weekend, someone is hosting a party. We all get together and eat, and it's actually a really nice time. But there's always that one creepy uncle. In my case, it's my mom's brother. He's 46-year-old and has never married, but he's a bachelor. He's got money, so he basically has a bunch of sugar babies. Whenever my family tells him that he needs to get married, he says he'll never get married to anybody. He thinks women only exist for the pleasure of men. When I turned 16, I noticed that he would stare at me a lot. At first, it was just staring. Every now and again, he never did anything really creepy then, but just the staring was enough for me. I never told my mom about it then, not until I turned 18. This is when he started making comments like, wow, you're growing into your body, or wow, you got great hips. He would make comments about how I was growing up, like, ew. He even told my dad that he needed to keep me away from guys because I was growing up really quickly. And because of my curves, men would think that I was a woman. This is when I finally told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable. She thought it was funny at first, so I avoided him at all costs. Storytime about how my creepy uncle flirts with me. Disclaimer, this is not my storytime. Send me on Instagram. When I told my mom that he was making me super uncomfortable, she laughed it off. She thought it was funny. She said, oh, you know how he is. So from that point on, I basically avoided my uncle every time we were at a family event. When I turned 20, this is when things got even worse. He would ask me things like if I was a virgin, or if I had a boyfriend, if I had ever been on dates. And one time he even told me that he would get very jealous if I ended up bringing a guy to one of our family events. One time he complimented me on the dress that I was wearing, so after that, I only wore baggy clothes to family events. The fact that I had to change the way that I dress so that he could control himself makes me sick. I finally told my mom again that my uncle was always bothering me. That's when she told me that the world is filled with men like him, and that all I needed to do was just ignore him. So I told my dad everything. My dad took it a little more seriously and told my uncle that he needed to stop making comments. My uncle just laughed. Part 3 is up. Storytime about how my boyfriend shames me for having cellulite. Disclaimer, is not my storytime. Send me on Instagram. I'm 24 years old and my boyfriend is 21. According to him, he has never been with any girl who's had cellulite before, or even an ounce of body fat. Yes, I know what you're thinking. He's a total asshole, which in that sense he is, but the rest of the time he's completely fine and actually sweet. We met last year at a friend's party. At the party, I instantly fell in love with him. I thought he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my entire life, and it was reciprocated. I saw him from across the room and he made eye contact. A few minutes later, he walked over to me and just struck up a conversation. I know that people present themselves the way they want to be seen, especially when they're trying to impress someone they're attracted to. He started telling me about how he's studying to be a doctor, how he volunteers at animal shelters, and that every single weekend he also volunteers at the soup kitchen. Everything he said was absolutely perfect. By the end of the night, he had asked me out on a date and I said yes. I did explain to him that I didn't want anything serious and he said that was totally fine. I was trying to focus on my studies, so having a boyfriend was not in my plans. But after we went on 7 dates, he asked me to be his girlfriend. He wouldn't take no for an answer. After about a month, I finally said yes. Mind you, at this point, he hadn't seen me naked, not even in a bathing suit. The very night that I said yes to being his girlfriend, he asked me to come over to his place. He made a whole gourmet dinner.